Have you ever wondered what it would be like to live through the end of the world? For the people of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century AD, it wasn't a hypothetical question. It was their reality. For centuries, Rome was the center of the known world, a beacon of power, law, and civilization. Its legions were unstoppable. Its engineering was legendary, and its influence stretched from the misty shores of Britain to the deserts of North Africa. But empires, no matter how mighty, are not eternal. The story of Rome's fall isn't a single, dramatic event, but a slow, complex unraveling over generations. It's a tale of political instability, economic crises, barbarian invasions, and a society struggling to hold itself together. Today, we're going to journey back in time to witness the final days of the greatest empire the world had ever seen. What went wrong? Could it have been saved? And what lessons can we learn from its collapse? Let's find out. To understand the fall, we first need to understand the crisis that set the stage. The 3rd century was a period of near constant chaos for Rome. We're talking about a 50-year span where there were over 20 different emperors, most of whom were assassinated or died in battle. This was the crisis of the 3rd century. The empire was plagued by civil wars, with ambitious generals declaring themselves emperor and marching their legions against each other. This constant internal conflict weakened the frontiers, making it easier for outside groups, who the Romans collectively called barbarians, to raid and plunder Roman territory. The economy was in shambles too. Emperors would debase the currency, mixing less precious metal into the coins to pay for their wars. This led to runaway inflation, making people's savings worthless. Trade routes became unsafe, and the interconnected economy that had made the empire so prosperous began to break down. A key figure who tried to stop the bleeding was Emperor Diocletian. He realized the empire was simply too large and too complex for one man to rule effectively. So, into 86 AD, he did something radical. He split it in two. He created an Eastern and a Western Roman Empire, each with its own senior emperor, called an Augustus, and a junior emperor, called a Caesar. This system was known as the Tetrarchy, or Rule of Four. The idea was to create a more stable line of succession and allow the rulers to focus on the specific problems of their region. For a while, it worked. Diocletian managed to stabilize the borders and reform the economy. But after he retired, the system collapsed back into civil war. It was from this chaos that another legendary figure emerged, Constantine the Great. Constantine reunited the empire under his sole rule, but he made a decision that would change the course of history forever. He moved the capital. In 330 AD, he founded a new Rome, the site of the ancient Greek city of Byzantium. He called it Constantinople. Today, we know it as Istanbul. This new capital had major advantages. It was strategically located at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, making it easier to defend and control vital trade routes. The eastern provinces were also wealthier and more urbanized than the west. This move effectively shifted the empire's center of gravity eastward. While the west would continue to face mounting problems, the Eastern Roman Empire, which we now call the Byzantine Empire, would survive and thrive for another 1,000 years. Constantine also legalized Christianity, a decision that would profoundly transform Roman society and culture, for better and for worse. So, let's fast forward to the 5th century. The Western Roman Empire is in deep trouble. One of the biggest problems was what historians call barbarian invasions. Now, the word barbarian can be misleading. It wasn't just mindless hordes bent on destruction. These were complex societies: Goths, Vandals, Franks, Huns, each with their own cultures and motivations. For centuries, Rome had managed these groups through a mix of diplomacy, trade, and military force. Some were even recruited into the Roman army as mercenaries or allies, known as foederati. But things started to change dramatically in the late 4th century. A fearsome nomadic group, the Huns, swept out of Central Asia, pushing other tribes, like the Visigoths, into Roman territory. These weren't just raids anymore. Entire peoples were migrating, seeking new homes and safety within the empire's borders. A pivotal moment came in 378 AD at the Battle of Adrianople. The Visigoths, who had been mistreated by Roman officials after crossing the Danube River, rose up in rebellion. They faced a Roman army led by the Eastern Emperor Valens himself. In a shocking turn of events, the Roman legions were utterly crushed, and the emperor was killed. It was a devastating psychological blow. For the first time, a barbarian army had defeated a major Roman field army on Roman soil and killed the emperor. It proved that the legions were not invincible. This encouraged other groups and set a dangerous precedent. The empire was forced to allow the Visigoths to settle inside its borders as a semi-independent nation, a state within a state. This brings us to one of the most famous events in this story, the sack of Rome in 410 AD. The Visigoths, now led by a charismatic king named Alaric, had been campaigning throughout Italy, demanding land and gold. After a series of broken promises from the Roman government, Alaric marched his army on the city of Rome itself. For the first time in 800 years, the eternal city fell to a foreign enemy. For 3 days, the Visigoths looted the city. While the physical damage wasn't as catastrophic as often imagined, the symbolic impact was immense. The city that had conquered the world was now helpless. People across the empire were stunned. How could this happen? It was a sign that the old order was truly crumbling. But the Visigoths weren't the only ones. In 406 AD, a massive group of Vandals, Alans, and Suebi crossed the frozen Rhine River into Gaul. The Roman frontier, stripped of troops to defend Italy, simply collapsed. The Vandals carved a path of destruction through Gaul and Spain. And in 429 AD, they did the unthinkable. They crossed the Strait of Gibraltar into North Africa. This was a catastrophic blow. North Africa was the breadbasket of the Western Empire, supplying Rome with essential grain. The Vandal leader, Gazaric, was a cunning and ruthless strategist. He captured the city of Carthage and built a powerful fleet, turning the Vandals into a major naval power. From their North African kingdom, they launched pirate raids across the Mediterranean and, in 455 AD, they sacked the city of Rome, this time much more thoroughly than the Visigoths had. While all this was happening, the Roman state itself was rotting from within. The political system was a mess. Real power was often not in the hands of the emperors, who were frequently weak, young, or ineffective, but in the hands of powerful military generals, often of barbarian descent themselves. Figures like Stilicho and Itius were the true rulers, but their power created jealousy and court intrigue, often leading to their assassination at the worst possible moments. The economy was in a death spiral. Heavy taxes, needed to pay for the massive army, crushed the small farmers and the middle class. Many abandoned their land, which was then consolidated into huge estates owned by the super-rich, who often used their influence to avoid paying taxes themselves. This widened the gap between rich and poor and shrank the tax base the state relied on. The population was also declining due to plagues, wars, and economic hardship. There were simply fewer people to farm the land, pay taxes, and serve in the army. The Roman army itself was changing. It was becoming increasingly barbarianized. Instead of citizen soldiers loyal to Rome, the ranks were filled with Germanic mercenaries. While these soldiers could be excellent fighters, their loyalty was often to their direct commander or to the promise of pay, not to the abstract idea of the Roman state. Sometimes, the very armies meant to defend the empire would turn against it. This reliance on foreign troops was a symptom of a deeper problem, a crisis of identity. What did it even mean to be Roman anymore in a world where the emperor might be a figurehead, the generals were barbarians, and the economy was failing? For many people, local loyalties to their town or their landlord became more important than allegiance to a distant and ineffective imperial government. The final act came in the year 476 AD. A Germanic chieftain named Odoacer was the commander of the barbarian Odoacer in Italy. When the Roman government refused his troops' demands for land, he led a revolt. He captured the Western Roman capital, which at this point was Ravenna, and deposed the last emperor, a young boy ironically named Romulus Augustulus, Little Emperor Romulus. But instead of declaring himself emperor, Odoacer did something different. He sent the imperial insignia, the diadem, the purple robe, and the scepter to the Eastern Emperor Zeno in Constantinople. The message was clear. There was no longer a need for a separate emperor in the West. Zeno formally accepted this, granting Odoacer the title of patrician and de facto ruler of Italy. And just like that, with a whimper rather than a bang, the Western Roman Empire was gone. So, was 476 the end? Yes and no. For the people living at the time, life didn't change overnight. The Roman Senate still met, people still spoke Latin, and Roman laws were still in use. But the central authority that had held the West together for 500 years had vanished. In its place, a patchwork of Germanic kingdoms emerged: the Franks in Gaul, the Visigoths in Spain, the Vandals in Africa, and the Ostrogoths, who would soon displace Odoacer in Italy. The great Roman roads fell into disrepair, long-distance trade collapsed, and cities shrank. Europe entered a period we often call the Dark Ages, a time of fragmentation and transition. But the legacy of Rome never truly died. Its language evolved into the Romance languages we know today: French, Spanish, Italian. Its laws formed the basis of many modern legal systems. Its engineering, its literature, and its ideas continued to influence the world. And in the East, the Roman Empire lived on for another millennium. The fall of Rome wasn't just an end. It was also a beginning, the painful birth of the medieval world, and the foundation upon which modern Europe would eventually be built. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the fall of the Roman Empire. It's a complex and fascinating story with no single, easy answer. If you enjoyed this video and want to explore more incredible moments from history, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments what you think was the biggest factor in Rome's collapse. Was it the invasions, the economy, or political corruption? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.